जय हिंद दोस्तों, मैं हूं मेजर मोहम्मद अली शाह और मेरा बहुत बड़ा सौभाग्य है और मेरे को बहुत खुशी हो रही है कि मैं अभी एक ऐसे वरिष्ठ आईपीएस ऑफिसर के साथ अभी गुफ्तगू में होऊंगा जिनका करियर रिमार्केबल. He has an unblemished service record. He's been Director General of Police UP. He's been DG CISF. He's been DG NDRF, that's National Disaster Management Force. He has written a very fine book, which most of you, I presume, would have already read. But for those who haven't read this, Crime, Grime, and Gumption. It is a book highly recommended to all of you. And let's go further on to a very senior IPS officer who needs no introduction at all. And let's ask him about what prompted him to write this book and the challenges he faced during this book and more about this book, in fact. Sir, Jai Hind and welcome. And thank you very much for spending time, sir.
Thank you so much, and Jai Hind to you also and to all your readers and listeners. Major, you have rightly asked me what prompted me to write this book. There have been many reasons for writing this book. It's a memoir. First of all, let me put it very clearly that it's a memoir. It's not an autobiography. It's a memoir, and memoir is nothing but a collection of reflections. In a way, you can say that it's a collection of stories about yourself, stories about your life, stories about your events which you encountered in your life. In 37 years of my police service, I've had many challenges, many stories to tell. And when you say that you are a storyteller, perhaps you have the power to captivate the audience, you have the power to connect the audience, and you have also the power to compel the audience to leave a lasting impression. And that could be the reason for writing a story or writing a memoir. Memoirs always surpass your statements. They evoke emotions, they ignite imaginations, and they also forge a very lasting bonds with the readers, with the people with whom you have worked. Let me begin by saying that police life, I belong to Indian Police Service of 1983 batch. I retired in 2020 after having put in 37 years of my services, where I served in Uttar Pradesh. I served in Central Deputation, as you rightly mentioned about various organizations. I was in a special protection group in Prime Minister's Security. I was in CRPF. I was in CISF. I was in National Disaster Response Force, NDRF. And then finally, I retired from UP Police after having served there as a state police chief. We all know that police life is a very hard life. It's a very complicated life, and it's often thankless. And it's filled with very tough and challenging moments. And perhaps as a police officer, as a former DGP, I can say that beauty lies in the memories forged through the experiences that you encounter. And you can imagine a police officer in an area, and I have served in many areas. You can imagine a police officer in an area which is plagued by terrorism, which is plagued by terrorist operations, and you have to navigate the dusty, plain roads of farmland with your rifles, which is fitted with, which is perhaps mounted also on the vehicle, and then you have to protect the citizens. This is one aspect of the policing. But the other aspect of policing is that you have to also immediately go and respond to somebody who wants your services. A land grabber could be there, a mafia person could be there, a gangster could be there threatening your life and property. And then on top of it, between the two, between the policing that you prevent some crime, then you have the social policing. There is another aspect associated with the policing, that is humanitarian kind of policing. Perhaps for the first time I realized that National Disaster Response Force is a humanitarian organization. And you try to respond to the people who are vulnerable, who are in need of your services. You touch their lives, you impact on their lives, you save their lives. And this is what we did perhaps 2 years where I remained as chief of the NDRF. We handled Srinagar flood, we handled Nepal earthquake of 2015, we handled a number of cyclones, Hudhud, Pylene, and so many others. Then the floods of various kinds, of various magnitude, the floods in Assam, floods in Northeast, floods in Bihar, UP, Rajasthan, Gujarat, Haryana. So all these places were totally vulnerable places where you had to respond as a rescuer, as a responder. So look at the facets of the policing. You have a different aspects of policing. And when you navigate those places, when you navigate your path as a police officer, you encounter a lot of challenges, a lot of experiences. You encounter a lot of memories, and those memories need to be told to the people, because they are the first-hand experiences. They are the first-hand stories by a police officer. And through these stories, perhaps the police officers or persons like me, we try to say that policing is not just a law and order instrument. It's not maintaining law and order alone. In fact, you remain as a pillar of strength for somebody who needs your services. You try to project yourself as a pillar of assurance, pillar of confidence to the vulnerable sections. And perhaps through my book, when I started writing immediately after the pandemic, when I started writing, I had this thing in mind, and a lot of friends, a lot of colleagues, they started telling me that why don't you pen down something which you have perhaps encountered in all those years. And then I wanted to share my first-hand impressions of law enforcement, showing the complexities of crime because they are unique, and also showcasing the resilience and commitment that the police officers are supposed to face. And perhaps you also have the feeling that by writing such memoirs, by writing such experiences of your life, you try to inspire others, the youngsters who are trying to join the services as a fresh recruit. So understanding and appreciation of all these things, perhaps that compelled me to write a book, and that is how the book was produced, which was released a couple of months back in the beginning of this year. And Major Shah, I can tell you that within 22 days, this book had gone for the reprint for the second edition, and now in 2 months' time, it's getting translated into Hindi. The Hindi edition will also come. So I'm quite hopeful, and it has got a very wide, very rave reviews from various sections, from various newspapers, articles, and quite happy about it. Yeah, the way it has been received by the readers.
So, so there are a lot of army officers who have read your book, in fact, and all of them, be it senior officers, junior officers, they all could connect with it. They all could relate with it, and it's gone viral in many Fauji groups, in fact. So I tell people it's not just for the forge or for the services. Even a civilian, a common man can relate with your book because that's the way, in very simple language, you have written this book, sir. So how much time did it take for you to actually, after the inception of this book, to actually, since it was released just a few months back, how much time did it take for you to work on this book, sir?
That's a very relevant question. In fact, a lot of people ask me that how much did it take to write such a book? I tell you very frankly and very honestly that I started writing when I retired in 2020. In January 2020, I retired. And you all know that immediately after that, you had the lockdown in the country. Pandemic started. This coronavirus spread out throughout the nation and, in fact, throughout the world. And that was the time when I was confined to my home. I was living in the hills. And there I thought that I must pen down how should I spend my time. I'll tell you one thing that right from the beginning, during my phases of services, I have been maintaining some kind of written documents at my disposal. I've been writing diaries, I've been writing notes, I've been preserving the clippings of the newspapers. At that time, there was no electronic media. Electronic media came very late. So, but YouTube became very handy because my statements were there, my press conferences were there. But largely and majorly, I depended on the newspaper clippings, which I've been keeping for the last 30, 35 years. So those newspaper clippings became very handy for me. And I started looking and I started browsing through those newspapers, my diaries and all that. They became a pillar for them. They were the base for me, baseline for me. And then I started writing. Since there was no diary for my childhood, there was no diary for my school and college, so I had to recollect everything. And that is why I wrote in my book, when I was writing the various things, acknowledgement and other things. I said that it's not an exhaustive account of every call. It's not an exhaustive account of every arrest or every investigation. It's a reflection. It's a collection of reflections, and that is why the memories play a very, very important role. They trick you a lot. You may not remember. So many things have happened in somebody's life. It happens with you. It happens to everyone. And as you advance in your age, you become old. You become not so conversant with the facts and figures of your life. You tend to forget. And it happened with me also. Most of the things I did not remember, and that is why I had no guts and courage to write an autobiography. Autobiography is much more difficult to write, much more difficult, because you have to narrate each and everything, the day you are born till the day you almost on the verge of death, or at the time, at the point when you are writing something. But this memoir has a very selective memory. So you pick out those things which you remember very clearly, because it has to be honest, it has to be truthful. You cannot write anything wrong. You cannot give anything in an exaggerated manner. So all these things have to be factored in life. And that is why I was very conscious of the fact that when I'm writing something, I need to be sensitive to the people who are still alive. I may be writing about chief ministers. I may be writing about bureaucrats. I may be writing about politicians. I may be writing about my friends, my colleagues, my foes, my family members, my relatives. But most of them are still alive, and I have to be sensitive to their feelings and respect and emotions. So that portion, I have to be very, very conscious of that fact. So there were so many things that perhaps were weighing in my minds, and ultimately it took almost 3 years to write. I was not a very passionately writing it. Sometimes I used to relax for some days, then I still start writing. So it took almost 2.5 years, 3 years, and then it took almost 1 year for the publishers to get negotiated, to bring them on the negotiating table. I was looking for a very good publisher, but memoirs have a very good. Memoirs are not majorly taken by the publishers, because they are not the best sellers in a way, unless you are a very, very famous, very internationally known person. So I had this time, but I was very lucky. I was very fortunate that Penguin picked up my book when I gave them the manuscript. I was lucky. I was fortunate. They liked my book. They liked my flavor. They liked my style of writing. And they also liked the way that I have experienced and narrated the whole thing. In fact, they were impressed by the way, my experiences have traveled over the years. And but they also took almost 7-8 months to decide. And then in the meanwhile, also I was in touch with several other publishers. Most of them, they refused to publish it. Some of them, they came forward, but I had some inhibitions, I had some reservations. So ultimately Penguin picked it up, and I was so glad and I was so happy. Penguin being a very, very famous publisher, internationally known, and they took almost 6 months to publish it, and finally it got released in February, last week of January or February. And I'm happy that it has gone in for re-edition, second edition, and now they are also working on translating it in Hindi edition, so that it has a wider readership amongst the people, not only amongst the policemen, but also amongst so many other people. Yes.
Sir, just for audience benefit, could you tell them, throw some light on the difference between an autobiography and a memoir? And in fact, a biography, like for example, Om Puri Saab, his biography was written by his wife, Nanda Puri, unlikely hero. Nasiruddin Shah Saab wrote, and then one day, that was his autobiography. Lieutenant General Samiruddin Shah Saab wrote The Sarkari Musalman, that was his autobiography. And
Yes.
I'm naming these books because I've particularly enjoyed reading these books a lot, sir. The way I enjoyed reading yours. So for audience benefit, if you could just throw some light on a memoir and an autobiography, the difference between the two, sir.
I cannot tell you in a very literary sense, but all that I can understand between the two is that autobiography is more detailed, it's more specific. You can't be selective in your autobiography, whereas memoirs basically depend on your memories. So memories can play a trick. You may remember, you may not remember. And memory, perhaps to my mind, doesn't require a very exhaustive details of everything. For example, in my memoir, I haven't mentioned about 37 years of my service. I have picked out only those things which were important, which were challenging, which were perhaps readable by the readers. So all these things have been picked up. But had I written some autobiography, as Mr. Nasruddin Shah has written, which is such a good read, I have read that book. I have a copy of that book with me. Or for example, Om Puri's wife had written his biography, which was also a very, very enjoyable read. Both the books are so good. So my simple and very plain explanation would be that uh, autobiography is much more detailed, much more exhaustive, whereas memoirs are not so exhaustive. It could be selective depending on how much you remember your things. It could start, it could confine to your services also. It could be, it could confine to your childhood. It could confine to your certain portions of your life which you have lived. Whereas autobiography has to be very, very detailed, starting from the child birth of yourself till the time you're writing. So that's a very common and very simple explanation, or maybe the difference between the two.
Sir, sir, thank you, sir. Sir, and lastly, I would like to ask you, where is the book available? Like our readers, if they wish to get a hand on it, where can they order it from, and from where can they get it, sir?
It's available on Amazon. You can always get it from the Amazon, and there are booksellers also in Delhi. For example, you get it in Khan Market. You get in other places also. I have seen my books being sold and being kept there at the airport also, at various airports. I saw them in Bombay Airport, Mumbai Airport. I saw them in Delhi Airport. They are available in Kolkata also. So it depends on how. And when I attended this book function, their literary function in Varanasi, I saw the books being shelved there in the bookstore. So in Lucknow, you can get the books. So there are many places where the books are available. My book is available, but you can always get it online through the Amazon.
Sir, thank you so much for sparing your time, sir. And I think it would be a good idea to finish it on 18 minutes because that's the TEDx time, the TED time as well. Sir, I truly am grateful to you for taking your time. So nice of you, sir. Thank you very much, sir. And I'm certain that this book is going to see a lot of success in the coming days to come, sir. Jai Hind, sir.
Thank you so much, Major Shah. Thank you so much, and I'm really overwhelmed. Yeah, very, very thankful for being invited to your show, and I really enjoyed talking to you. Thank you.
Sir, very kind of you, sir. And sir, so to make a small confession before I let you go and before I end it, sir, at dot 5, in fact, for 5 minutes before 5, my network went away. And I was so embarrassed. I was in a flap. You could see the sweat on me. I was
Yes.
so jittery. I was like, oh my goodness, this is the last move, like Murphy's Law. I said, this is Murphy's Law. I can't afford to let go of this. And I wrote to you on the message. So I was very
Yes.
impatient, greedy, and hungry to grab the earliest opportunity to have this chat with you. And so I'm so grateful finally we did that, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
No,
Jai Hind, sir.
but I must tell you, pleasure was all mine, and I really enjoyed talking to you and being on your show. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.